Hello everyone, this is the Titanic by COBI, or rather, it's one of the many versions of Titanic that they make or have made. I bought this particular one for its standard suggested retail price of $250 US, built it live over on Twitch. This kit is made with 2,840 pieces, and the completed length is just over 3 feet or 92 centimeters. So if I grab, let's see, a completely random minifigure from a compatible brand that just gives you an idea of the overall scale. This is made with no stickers, so anything that you see on here that it has an obvious graphic decoration, you'll see some on the sides and also on the top, as well as, of course, the nameplate. That's all done with prints, which is absolutely the norm for COBI. Anytime you see a sticker in a COBI set, it's most likely a rather old COBI set because they're really big on prints. And some of the prints that they do are super, super impressive. Almost a little bit too much, I think, with some of the lengths to which they go. But I wanted you to be able to see this from some different angles. The great thing about ship models is that they're so thin. So even something that's this large can still be reasonably displayed in many spaces. You know, it can be put on top of a bookcase. I think it's a little bit longer than most bookcases typically are. There are some that are that big, but generally you're gonna have to put this on top of a table, a desk, or all the way up closer to the ceiling on top of furniture. But I will get you in closer here. I just wanted you to get a general idea of its overall shape and appearance. Before I get to the deck, I want to show the hull shaping a bit, because the number of different shapes, sizes, and proportions and radii of slopes and curved pieces that COBI has in their regular part inventory is pretty impressive. And you actually, if you're used to other brands, you have to be extra careful when building with COBI to make sure that you don't grab the wrong pieces as you go. They do tend to call out, like, in the following bag, be sure to use this piece and not this other piece that looks similar. Here's the difference. They'll show that in the instructions, but it's something that takes getting used to if you're more used to the part inventories of a company that doesn't have that many. But because they have so many different standardized parts that are all on system, they're all plate-based and brick-based, and they all will fit together in basically normal ways. Because they have so many, they're able to get some really interesting shapes with genuine building techniques without cheating with extra large parts or anything like that. And you can see some of that along the side here. But in spite of that, they didn't quite get the shaping right here. I have to say, the Titanic itself, if I can get this to focus more like that. The Titanic has an interesting flange up there, right in this area, that isn't quite captured. There's definitely a really good attempt that was made here, but it's not quite there. I feel like it needs to flange out a little bit more. Towards the stern, again, the shaping is pretty interesting and I think is well done for this scale, but it does get a bit chunky around the propeller shafts here. Like, this is all too thick in this area. And also there are a few studs that end up showing up that I'd rather not see. This is actually kind of cool what they did here with the bracket piece. They've had this part in their inventory for a long time now, but having it facing down is cool. It gets you that nice thin bit here, but then you have studs on the bottom again. You also see some gaps between the parts that are not absolutely ideal, and tends to be a little bit, in my experience, unusual. Like, normally I don't see these kind of gaps. Normally COBI pieces are known for fitting together exceptionally well, almost too well, to the point where they're difficult to take apart. Right here you see a little bit of discoloration where the colors just don't match. That's because they actually printed this piece. You can see it's a slope piece that's based around a 1x2, and the slope portion of it is black, but then the plate portion that sticks out on the side and in the middle of it is also black, but printed with the red on either side. They're just trying to keep that color from bleeding in. It's a good attempt. It's not ideal. Definitely needed to have better red on that. The Titanic, if I can get this to focus in, there we go. This is very nice. This print right here, the rear plate is printed up nicely on a part that is curved on multiple axes, compared to what you see up here at the bow, which is a print on just a flat plane. COBI continually shows a willingness to make specialized parts where they feel it's needed to get the level of detail at a given scale, such as with the anchors here. So you got the center one and the side one's done in the gunmetal gray color. It's a specialized part. This is a relatively standardized part that can be used for many things. Those are just standard bar sizes, but they're probably things that you haven't seen before if you're more familiar with the leading brand. This is highly specialized for the crane. This represents the front anchor crane. Chains come in individual links, so you actually have to put the chain together yourself, and that allows them to allow the customer, the builder, to make custom lengths that perfectly fit into a specific space. There's some really cool pieces here with like the double anti-stud chain end loop right there. This is a stud with a bar on the base of it. Look at that. It's just such weird stuff. It's always interesting to build with COBI or just different brands in general and see what is available out there. Many different individual prints that are used along here to try to get what is supposed to be the correct spacing. I don't know how well that actually lines up. The resolution at this scale is not perfect, I think. These are obviously specialized pieces for the vents, and you notice that is an off-white color. That is intentional. That is actually one of the colors in the COBI inventory. Their gray colors are also true grays. They don't have a bluishness to them. It's too bad about the crow's nest here, which is done with just a tile piece that's connected to the pole. Now, I need to talk about these lines. These were really interesting. I had not experienced anything like this before. These strings, they are heavily waxed, very heavily waxed, and that helps them to hold their shape. However, you do need to tie them. So I've just not cut off the excesses, but you need to tie right down here and tie your own knots. You need to tie right down here. You need to tie right down here. You need to go across. You need to tie back over there. You need to tie this up a little bit so it doesn't move. This needs to be wrapped around at the top. Oh, we'll talk about the stacks in a minute, but just dealing with all that string, it's more of a modeling experience than a brick-based construction assembly experience. I did not enjoy that, which is odd to me because I like the idea of strings. I like the idea of rigging on a model, but it wasn't enjoyable here. I appreciate the wax really helped a lot, but ultimately that was a bit of a trying experience, I have to admit. Okay, we've got a couple of stairways approximated here with the sideways grill pieces. These are the front cargo hatches, and then these represent the cranes for loading cargo, and they are able to go just past the edge of the deck there, past the bulwark. But these, unfortunately, do have no friction in them, so they're able to kind of flop around as you move this around. They're not going to move on their own, and the thing's just sitting there, but I wish that those had a little bit of friction built into them. As we go back here, this was actually less especially along the promenade and I forget the proper name for this deck right here. This was less difficult and less annoying, honestly, to build than I expected. It looks like, oh my goodness, there's just so many of those pieces, but somehow the order of operations and the arrangement of the pieces actually made it not too difficult and not too just agonizing. So it did not feel to me as repetitive as it looks here. And also it helps a lot that they've got these side kind of bracket pieces, studs on the side pieces that are 3 studs long. You'll see some interesting things, like right under here is an upside down. So there's a little piece of fuzz right there, but there's an upside down tile to fill in that space. They've buried some of these pieces here along the side just a little bit. Also, these do not have studs on the other side. It's just anti-stud on both sides. You also probably noticed by this time the lifeboats, which are also in that off-white color, which I think is pretty good. And the kind of tan-like color that they use is actually a beige. It's like a desert camo beige, or a desert sand beige color, which is interesting, but I personally probably would have preferred something a little bit more vibrant. With these stacks, that color is good. It's a somewhat earthy color. You know, it's not super, super saturated. It feels good to me. It feels right. And amongst these funnels, you will see more side printing with parts that are black right down in there. You see right in the center on either side, parts that are black but printed with a little bit of paint to try to match the off orange color there. And again, it's not as opaque as it needs to be. I would like to see that be a little bit more complete, but it's certainly better than leaving it alone. And some of them were printed a little bit better than others. This one here on the left is probably the worst that I see on the model, and you'll see others that are better. But again, here, more tying. I had to tie these up, these strings, and try to get them all nice and close. Really helped to use a pair of tweezers to get the ends nice and tight and everything. Good level of detail, I think, for the scale up here on top. These brown bits represent benches, and well, there's just no detail at this at this resolution, at this scale. That's a print to represent the forward first class grand stairway, skylight, big skylight that goes over there. You'll see another one of these later on, but most of this here is just kind of repeating what we saw. This is a specialized piece, a unique print that was used to represent the structure that holds up the compass tower there. That's nice to see. Could have used a print on this piece. This is such a weird piece. It's a little flag piece. But just to see it by itself, it's the same part that's used for the other flags, the printed flags on the set. But to see it by itself as a 1/2 plate thickness, effectively like tile with clip on the side, it's just really interesting. It feels like it has a lot of possibilities for it. Here, again, more of very similar to what we saw before. Another of that same print over here. Down below, there's nothing else to see. There's nothing else new to see because this just continues. This is repeated. But again, to me, as I went through the process of building this live, I did not feel, definitely did not feel as repetitive and annoying as it looked. Take my word for that, or don't. It's entirely up to you. But I was expecting it to be horrendous and just painful from looking at it. Got some prints back here to represent the outlets. I forget what exactly this vents here, but those represent openings. You got more of the cranes back here that, again, unfortunately have no friction in the base of them. You can see some thin upside down tiles, half height tiles. So that's the thickness of 1/2 of a plate or 1/2 of a tile. Applied to the underside, just more really interesting parts. This stuff back here, I think, feels pretty good for its size and scale. This felt a lot better than many of the other parts. Like the center of the ship didn't feel that great to me, but back here feels a lot better. It looks a lot better to me. And that brings us, these again represent more of the benches, and this is the rear docking bridge, and it ends you with another flag back here. I will note that the flags on this are different, for example, than the flags on the big model from a different company that I separately reviewed over on my main review channel. But from my research, these are correct for one of the moments, one of the times along the way. Look at this. This string goes all the way out. At one point in time, and at one part of the journey, this was the correct actual flag orientation and layout. I did not realize that ships change the flags that they run as they go from one space to another for various political reasons. And when I say political, I don't necessarily mean just bad reasons, but just to kind of show off their affiliation, or to give homage to the space that they're going through, or to show partnerships between different countries, and also just somewhat for ceremonial reasons along the way. So I learned a bit about that. It was a little bit off-putting at first to see inconsistency, but then I realized that it's actually just a bit of reality that has been covered differently by different takes on the same model. Overall, this thing presents nicely. There's a lot of accuracy to its overall proportions, but it does feel like it loses in overall level of detail because of this scale. But I am glad that they didn't resort too much to too specialized parts, although the dinghies, rather large dinghies, the lifeboats are a part that they've used for many of their maritime sets, and I'm glad that they did include those because that really helps here. And these are attached with just anti-studs, by the way. They're able to attach to the system. They're designed for the system, but they could have been done with just that color of plastic with just some regular brick-based pieces instead. Some people would have definitely preferred that. Another thing I want to point out is that this is a very strong model. I'm not worried about it breaking apart. There we go. So I've actually banged this on a desk live and used it kind of like a hammer, and it's super sturdy. The fact that I can pick it up by one hand is a good thing, I think, and the fact that it doesn't sag at all in the center or on the sides when I do so definitely speaks a lot for just how solid it is. It's built nice and solidly, even though we've got tiles on the sides and a lot of studs on top of studs construction, a little bit of studs on the side construction, just where needed. Ultimately, the end result is something that I have confidence in. And I also don't see any colors that I don't want to see. There's no angle at which I can look at this and say, oh, well, I can kind of see the inner structure if I look at this from a certain angle. Nope, none of that exists. So that's satisfying as well. Let me show you the spare parts, the leftovers from this. That's it. Mostly extra chain links, and here's a better look at that piece if you haven't seen it in particular with just the anti-stud on either side. It's a very square piece. Useful. I don't know why these were included, but COBI is well known for often including extra parts that sometimes don't make sense. They'll just give you extra stuff for you to have. These actually will go together right here to form that joint, and this is used to hold on to a string, as a little loop. I also want to show you this. If you're not familiar with COBI, this is one of the most brilliant pieces ever used, ever invented, in my opinion, ever, period, for brick-based construction systems. It is a hollow stud. It is literally a stud. It can be attached to the underside of a brick or to anything that has an anti-stud shape to add a stud there. It is typically used on plates. So you add it to the underside of a plate or the underside of a curve or something, but you stick this in there and it gives you a stud where previously you had an anti-stud. And COBI does a lot of things like this. It's not the ideal situation here. It's going to go in too far, but COBI does a lot of things like that to allow you to just change the direction of building in the easiest way. This, as it is right now, is not going to work appropriately, because if I try to attach it to something, it's going to probably more than likely push in. But I've got a plate here. I could do this. So this allows me to quickly, there we go. Allows me to quickly make a stud piece that has a stud on the underside of it. So now I can attach this, for example, here, and that's how you can make that work. A lot of stuff that they do that is just fantastic, and this barely scratches the surface. All right, let's talk about value. Again, this was $250 US standard retail price, although since then I've seen it mostly at $225 or $200 at originally Walmart is the first retailer in the US that got this, if I recall correctly, and then Amazon. Just since then, it's been available on Amazon, including as of the time of the recording of this video. It's $202 as of the time of the recording of this video. But that doesn't matter. To be fair, I have to go by the suggested retail price of $250 US, which feels like too much to me. I've heard consistently that COBI products are much cheaper over in Europe where they're produced, but I'm in North America, paid $250 for this, and that feels like too much for this, especially given the fact that it is not absolutely premium quality. COBI quality has gone up a lot over the past decade. I mean, a lot, and it's in the upper echelon now in terms of fit and finish and how well and how consistently the parts hold themselves together. But if you have keen eyes during the review process, looking up close, you probably saw that not every line was perfectly lined up. There's a little bit of variance. Some of that might have come down to just me not being careful enough while I was building this live with, like, I don't know, 100 people or so, chatting at me on Twitch. But I've built a lot of things in that environment, and I feel like this is just not 100% in terms of fit and finish. So for this to be worth $250, for me, it would need to be absolutely top tier, fit and finish wise, and I would really like it to have more detail. Honestly, this section felt good, or looks good to me. This section looks good. The middle, the stacks are good, but the deck doesn't look as good to me. It just looks too plain. Needs a little more of something, even at this scale. I don't know if it would have been possible or realistic to add additional detail with some just some round chamfered edges on some specialized plates or tiles or something. They typically don't have ridges underneath their tiles. That makes everything a lot more squared off. It means you end up not having gaps. You end up not having texture where they don't want you to have texture. But I feel like this could have benefited from more texture on the sides and also on the top exterior deck here. So for me, I really don't want to see this. I wouldn't want to buy this. I would not want to have to pay more than $200 US, preferably less. Like 175 honestly feels like the sweet spot. I would be happy with 175 for this much stuff. 200 I think is acceptable where it's usually sold. So that's kind of how I feel in terms of what is a good value. And things that I don't like on this, definitely having to tie these lines off. That was definitely an ordeal in order to get them nice and tight, to get every line to have the correct tension on it. I don't like the fact that these cranes are able to just keep doing that all the time. I wish that they would just stay in one place. And honestly, probably what I like least about this model is this section back here where the propeller shafts exit, because this is just an area of interest to me personally on ships in general. Just the hydrodynamics of the rear of a ship. There's so much water that's moving so fast. It's doing so much back there. It's just really interesting to me. And then, coming up to the propellers, and when a ship is brand new, the propellers are all shiny and everything. And this is it's just too thick in this area. And then having those rogue open studs at least if they were closed studs, standard studs, it would have been less, less offensive to my senses. But yeah, that texture back there just kind of falls apart, honestly, to me. There are some studs right here on the sides, and I'm actually okay with those. There's a stud up front, but most of this is pretty consistent. But the back, which I personally really want to see done well, here is unfortunately not done well. What is done well on this is the strength. Oh, this thing will not twist. It's so solid. So yeah, that's great. The scale is really good. The size is really good. So many of the really interesting pieces they use. This off orange color, kind of earth orange color that they use is really nice. Honestly, I do like the waxy material, super heavily waxed material of otherwise organic, I think rattan based string even. It's an organic fiber based string. It's interesting, but the wax does get on your fingers, and then still tying them off requires, to do it right, probably requires using two pairs of tweezers even to get some of these in there. And yeah, a little extra patience. I do like the prints, most of the prints on this. Some of them definitely could have been more opaque, as I called out along the way. But overall, for its size and scale, it's pretty darn nice. And you can see this thing, like, it has good contrast without too much. It doesn't look too toyish. It looks more model-like because of their kind of relatively earthy tones, especially that are used above the water line, and the fact that nothing shows up, no colors that you don't want to see really show up in any of the gaps or anything is really nice. I appreciate that. So it's very, very presentable. It's definitely something you can be proud of, but it's not 100%. It could have been better, and the suggested retail price is too much. $200 or less, we're in a much better zone. So those are my thoughts. I will compare this on video to probably a couple other versions in a couple different videos, a couple other versions of brick-built Titanics coming up in the future. Of course, if you're mostly interested in seeing my builds of the leading brand, and my reviews of the leading brand rather, check out my other channels, because I have specialized channels for different things. Channel list is in the video description. If you want to see me build stuff live, you can do that over on Twitch. It is interesting, it is fun, it is different, it is not for everybody, but I sure enjoy the heck out of it, as do a lot of other people who come through. So thank you for your patience here. Thank you for making it through this review. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was informative to you, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.